Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ola. Uh, we're here for our presentation on Vodafone, Egypt, and the Arab Spring. Here with me, I have Alencia, I have Tamaya, I have Dion. And the next is table of content. We have the rise of internet usage, Vodafone and their transition to the Egyptian market, the rise in conflict in Egypt and its effect on censorship. We have Dawda, the Egyptian government. We also have if Vodafone leaves Egypt, if Vodafone stays in Egypt, and we also have group opinion, and the last one is recommendation. I would go ahead with the rise of internet. In the beginning, internet in the late 60s, internet began with Hard Planet, a project funded by the US Department of Defense that connected computers at universities and research institutions. In the late 70s and also 80s, the development of transmission control protocol and internet protocol, it allows a different network to connect, forming the modern network, the modern internet that we have today. In 1989, Tim Berners-Lee introduced the World Wide Web, making it easier for people to access information online. During the 90s and early 20s, internet usage grew rapidly as businesses and households went online, supported by companies that we have today, like Google and Amazon. Today, billions of people use the internet for communication, education, shopping, and intimate entertainment. Sorry, throughout platforms such as Facebook and Instagram. I would leave it up for Alencia next.
Okay, so I will talk about Vodafone and their transition to the Egyptian market. Given the rise of technological advances in the 1980s, Vodafone was one of the industry leaders in mobile telecommunications. After becoming an independent entity in 1991, Vodafone's popularity quickly rose across the UK, leading to their first round of expansion in Germany in 1999. Breaking through in other countries like Japan, Denmark, and Ireland shortly after, Vodafone prided themselves as being an ethical and responsible company that provided services for enabling a more sustainable society for its consumers. And starting off as Click GSM in 2002, Vodafone later integrated themselves under the company name in 2007, once given a 15-year 3G license, courtesy of the Egyptian National Telecom Regulatory Agency. And they soon became the largest mobile phone provider in the country, especially as it related to revenue share and customers. And they provided mobile services to roughly 98% of the country's population and contributed to 1.5% of the country's GDP. Vodafone was especially able to capitalize and grow in Egypt as the country's economy grew from 84.8 billion USD in 1998 to 218.9 billion USD in 2010. And I will pass it on to Tamaya.
All right, so in 2011, Egypt experienced major protests during the Arab Springs. Citizens were frustrated with corruption, unemployment, and limited political freedom under the Egyptian military officer who had ruled for nearly 30 years. Thousands gathered in Tahrir Square demanding political change. Social media and mobile phones helped people organize protests quickly. This also raised concerns for the government about information control and censorship. So during the protest, the Egyptian government ordered telecom companies like Vodafone to shut down their network services to limit communication among protesters. The CEO had two options. Option one, to follow the government's order to shut down services and protect Vodafone's operation licensed business in Egypt. Or option two, refuse the order to keep services running to support communication and freedom of speech, but risk government's penalties or losing access to Egyptian market. Now I'm handing it over to Dion.
So the decision to continue operation in Egypt presents Vodafone with two different options. One of Vodafone's three primary goals to preserve its status as a leading telecommunications company was its commitment to responsible, ethical, and honest behavior. With the decision to be compliant with the regime's order comes the result of significant and lasting consequences. Brand reputation would be severely damaged and widely criticized for shutting down its network and disseminating the regime's agenda. These actions would warrant accusations of Vodafone's contribution to human rights violations by hindering protesters' abilities to communicate and organize. The focus on creating sustainable societies would take a backseat to enabling the government's crackdown on free speech and assembly. Vodafone's 2011 sustainability report stated that access to communications technologies supported a greater freedom of expression. To support this, the value of free speech was embedded in Vodafone's human rights policy. However, refusal to obey the direct order of the government would leave the Vodafone facing threats of forced operational shutdown. In cases of national security, the Egyptian government was granted the authority to take control of telecommunication services and networks, leaving Vodafone with very little leverage. To talk more about the decision to leave Egypt, I'll be followed byAlencia Lamb.
So the second option that was presented to Dowder was to leave the Egyptian market if Vodafone did not comply. As it stated in the case study, there's a delicate balance between the telecommunications industry and the governmental power. Because Vodafone has the stance of being an ethical company by providing a voice for the voiceless, if they were to leave Egypt, this would have the potential to cause an economic deficit, making them lose out on millions to potentially billions of dollars. And because they feel that the citizens are being censored and that it is a violation of their human rights in addition to other factors, they've also begun to feel restricted. Also with risking their brand's trustworthiness, an exit might be inevitable. One of the main concerns that Vodafone would have would be laying off the employees in the country. Given that they don't outsource the employees, this will cause some form of instability with the Egyptian's economy or with Egypt's economy, with hundreds or thousands out of work. I'm looking into severance pay or other unemployment benefits will possibly be costly, but might be able to soften the blow of employment termination. A Vodafone would also have to determine how to make up the loss from one of their largest consumer bases. And I will pass it back to Dion.
So making a decision between complying with the mandatory government shutdown orders and refusing to do so in support of the protesters highlights the tension the companies face when desiring to be compliant while prioritizing human rights obligations. This often forces corporations into impossible choices between their operational survival and their ethical responsibilities. Though it may not be the change or the likely outcome that Vodafone's compliance, the company could challenge the legality of the president's orders and document the process for transparency within its customer base. My colleague Ola will present recommendations for future operations.
Oh, thank you. And to close this, we have few recommendations that we would like to recommend. The first one is I would recommend pursuing strategic compliance with transparency. And this path would balance the need for operational safety with long-term integrity. And also, it will use transparency as a powerful tool to defend the company's brand, which is very important. It accepts the reality of operating under a corrective regime. It also fights the company principle and through radical public honesty. And this approach protects people, company's license, and it is global reputation. This is going to be the end of our presentation. Thank you.